Hello there. Hi, so nice to meet you. My name is, let me press play here. My name is Olaf van Gerwen. I am the founder of Chuck Studios, a production house based out of Amsterdam. By trade, I'm a film director and a DOP, and I work for food and drink brands only. At a certain point in my career, I found myself shooting the same beer swirl and the same burger dropping for different brands, which I found a bit strange, because brands in the same category, they look at each other and they say, "Wow, can you make me that shot?" And I found that funny, getting briefed with images from the competitor, right? So that's the puzzle we're about to solve a little bit, hopefully, today. But let's kick off with a little bit of crowd participation here. I hope there's some extroverts in the room. I'm gonna need you to shout the brand name that comes to mind first. Ready? There you go, the whole room says Corona. Yep. Oy. Ah, a lot of them know that. There you go. There you go, Cheetos. Same thing. Well, all these things are very cleverly constructed, distinctive brand assets. And now, back to school, what is that? That is a distinctive brand asset is a non-brand name trigger for a brand name in a category buyer's memory. And that can be anything from a logo to a jingle, a color, a character, a celebrity, etc. Many of our clients are masters at branding and marketing, so we see that the brand thinking is often in the center of everything that we do. The DNA is translated into a mission, a vision, and values, and that again is translated into identities. We have a visual identity, we have a sonic identity. Sometimes we see brands with a sensoric identity. We see brands with a verbal identity. We think as a company that food brands can benefit from what we call a culinary identity. Choices about how the food is depicted really are often left unconsidered or based on subjective feeling or tastes, personal taste. So these questions can be as simple as how do we cut the vegetables? Or in what stage do we show the food? Or what's the angle? Or what's the lighting? Those kind of things. And as a result, because these choices are often not made, we see a lot of inconsistency in the depiction of the food. And then there's some specific challenges with in our industry. It starts with product similarity. Milk looks like milk and beer looks like beer. The minute the product is outside the packaging, it's mostly unbranded. And there is very strong category traditions. Brands in the same space tend to gravitate towards a similar visual language. The dairy pack shot usually looks a bit like this. It's near an open window, it's, it talks about harvesting, farmer life, the force of the early morning. And in burger world, we see a lot of this. We see a more masculine world with dark surfaces and dark background and bold typography, etc. And then the chocolate boys, they're the worst in this category. They all have their logo emerge from liquid chocolate. And there is just so amazingly many of them. It's drowning in a sea of sameness. And this is, in our opinion, where we should stay away. Now, what can we do? First up, a few levers we can pull. First up, we talk about the domain. Now, food is everything. Food is full of connotations and emotions and traditions. And together with the brand, we explore what are the most relevant aspects to talk about in real life. What would tell your brand story best? And then the big question is, what does that mean for how you depict the product? The next axis is the axis of time. Take a look at this. Yeah, so there you have it. A food product has a life cycle, and it often starts with the first seeds into the ground, and it ends with the aftertaste. Now, which moment in the timeline tells your brand story best? We see brands that pick a very particular moment, and that is when we depict our food. And that's an interesting thing to look at. And of course, your timeline may look completely different. The next thing we can put to work as makers is, we call it the toolbox of taste. In that toolbox, there's a ton of instruments that we can put to use as makers to make taste and flavor appear on screens. Food styling, set styling, contrast, movement, hands, lenses, angles, those kind of things. And these things we see as sliders, a bit like on an equalizer. And then there's this.
In your professional opinion, what is your finest ham?
I don't know, they're all good.
All right, let's put it in story form. It's your last meal before you're executed by the state. What ham do you add to your turkey sandwich before they inject you with a cocktail of death?
Honey glazed.
Mr. Deliman, half a pound of honey glaze, please.
Right. Emotion and story. Our brains are just hardwired to work much better with story and emotion than with rational things. We memorize that better. And story and emotion can be an explosion on the moon or a roller coaster. We don't know exactly what that is, but in advertising it could be a history in advertising or a founder story. And looking at images in that analytical way can be very useful. This shot we made for a burger place a while ago. And on first instance, the choices that were made that make this shot into what it is would be these. But if you look on one level deeper, there's many, many more. And analyzing images can inform you on where to go with your food depiction. What do you like, what don't you like? What tells the good things about the brand and what doesn't? It's similar to thinking in series. A series of images, these images clearly belong together, but it's not only the table shape and the table color that binds them together. There's many, many, many factors that make this into a series and make them clearly belong together. Now, our solution to this problem we call a culinary identity. And that is a strategy that dictates your choices in food depiction, because you've spent time and resources solving this for the long run. And how does it do that? It does that by translating brand values into food depiction. A silly example, should you have to make an identity with a cucumber, if you're a classic brand, you would cut it like this. But if you're a new school brand, you would cut it like this. And maybe you're a family brand, or maybe you're very experimental, or you're very patient, or exotic, or playful. Now, only with the instrument of food styling, we're telling a completely different story with a simple product like a cucumber. And if we design a culinary identity, the final deliverable of that process, we call a culinary playbook. That's like a brand book about the product and the depiction of it. It covers 4 major topics. First up, there's the strategy. What are we doing and why are we doing it? And what is it underpinned with? Secondly, there is a culinary foundation, and that is it's a little sentence, a short little sentence that describes how we depict the food. It often becomes a mantra in the organization, and it serves as an anchor to keep everyone in the same place. Everyone who works on the brand knows that term and will run with it and make it into an actual deliverable. So that the foundation is there, and then we develop distinctive brand assets. Like we've seen in the beginning, we develop things that over time will become a distinctive brand asset that will build memory structures and create brand recall over time. And then there's codes. We call them codes because they are behaviors, like do's and don'ts, that we do but are not per se unique to the brand. But we do them consistently so we look the same always. And so that we don't have to agree on them every ppm again and again, because we've all sat there talking about a spoon for 2 hours. That's not what you want. Now, if you do that as a brand, you develop a culinary identity, what then does it give back? What does it do for you? Firstly, and nobody debates the importance of consistency. We all know that that's the way to conquer a little piece of the brain of the consumer. Secondly, it creates distinction, or brand salience, if you will. There are simply more cues that create brand recall, and it will make your brand come to mind earlier in a buying situation. It is a briefing tool when you're briefing photographers, directors, food stylists, designers, maybe agencies. We know how to handle the product, and we do it always in that way for good reasons. And when you're shooting an asset, it is an evaluation tool. You can ask yourself, hold the book practically next to what you're shooting and say, is the food on brand? Because this is what we do. The food will speak the brand. Now, next up is my wonderfully talented colleague, Christy. She's going to tell us more about how image makers, such as herself, put these instruments to use practically to not only make it look delicious, but also tell a story. Christy.
Hi there, I'm Christy Snell. I'm the creative director at Chuck Studios Amsterdam, and I happen to also be a photographer and filmmaker. In my profession, I'm constantly seeking new and exciting ways to depict food. And that's one of the reasons for me being here. I want to share with you the processes and tools I use to make food look amazing. There's a great quote by Georgia O'Keeffe. I found I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say any other way, things I had no words for. Now that doesn't only apply to color and shapes. In my profession, I need to portray deliciousness. As a maker, there are many instruments and tools available to help me make food delicious and ultimately express things without words. And how do we create deliciousness? Well, with the use of color. It comes to no surprise that this image that is on screen screams sweet. The pink color tells us it's sweet, and the soft round shapes also suggest sweetness. I recently stumbled across a piece of research where people were asked to draw aromas. And here you have a screen grab of it. The participants were given sweet, sour, spicy aromas to smell. After smelling sweet, they drew round shapes in colors of red and purples and pinks. Sour was reimagined in yellows and greens and spiky shapes, and spicy, unsurprisingly, sharp edges in red and orange tones. So apparently we all have some sort of combined subconsciousness that informs us how certain tastes and smells should visually be represented. And in this example, you can really see the left example looks completely sweet, and the right one really evokes sourness. And what else can create deliciousness? Well, there's texture. The subtle, slow movement of the cheese melting is satisfying, especially against this crispy chicken. The opposite textures make each texture more defined. And then there is lighting. This chocolate was shot using soft lighting that really accentuates the luscious texture of chocolate. The soft highlights draws our attention to the ribboning effect of the chocolate. And let us not forget human interaction. Humans can really help us tell a story. When we look at the pizza image, we really can see that pool of that delicious mozzarella. In the middle, the wonderful ramen balances delicately on chopsticks. And the third image, I cannot wait. I sit there in anticipation waiting for the marshmallow to snap. And now I want to share a practical case study with you. We recently shot for an Indonesian brand some packaging, and one of the images we had to shoot was stir-fried beans with chili sauce. Now, what does this image tell us? Well, the straight edges and the evenly displacement of the chili and the dense composition really says man-made. It's not very attractive, and it doesn't suggest health or stir-fries, which are really fast in cooking. So we decided we could do better, so we reshot it. And wow, what a difference. The loose composition really foreshadows that fast movement of wok cooking. The beans uncut remind us of nature and earth. And the uneven coating of the chili really makes us understand the thickness of the chili sauce in places, because we have the differences. Some are less sauced and some are more sauced. Now I'm going to throw a few images at you and discuss how specific choices that are made can represent values of brand. Because after all, we're here to discuss culinary identity, which translates brand values into food depictions. And just for fun, we're going to look at a couple of slides and see what values we can apply to certain images. Look at this chocolate image. What can this say? What values can we assign to it? Well, how about masterful, powerful, and bold? Masterful, well, look at that highlight running perfectly design-like on the edge of the chocolate. Powerful, Well, the chocolate is moving horizontally. It's determined. It literally goes against the grain. And bold, well, the contrasting textures create a boldness and almost a rebellion. And here we have this. I shot this for a dairy brand. It's one of my favorites. What values can we assign to this? How about playful, innocent, and magical? Magical, well, the strawberries are literally coming from heaven, so you would imagine they taste out of this world. The candy-striped parachutes suggest confectionery, innocence from a childlike perspective, playful, well, that lovely swayful movement of the parachutes landing into the yogurt is unusual for yogurt brands, and so it creates a really lovely, playful look. Moving on to something I did for spec work. What can we say about this? How about surreal, cute, and adventurous? Adventurous, well, the banana is certainly going somewhere. He looks very determined. Cute, well, I used the format of stop motion because stop motion obviously often creates a playful look. Surreal, well, it's a banana swimming through a surface. Next up, we have this. It was shot for a juice brand. They wanted to identify as playful and creative. So the values that I associate with this is surreal, quirky, and stylized. Stylized, well, the tone-on-tone palette really removes it from reality and places it into a graphic environment. Surreal, well, we have an apple falling from one surface into another. That really disrupts our concept of space. And quirky, well, the styling of the apples and the repetition kind of wallpaper look adds a quirk. Moving on to this triptych. It's an image of 3 pictures, and they all reflect traditional values. The lighting is soft, the styling is uncluttered, and the food sits on display in a proud-like manner, suggesting quality lies in simplicity. Now, in contrast, look at this. It's also a still life, but unlike the previous triptych, the food depiction here is modern, artsy, and complex. The intention is on design and composition, rather than taste appeal. These images want the audience to engage and find pleasure in the playful depiction. Placed side by side, we can really see the different connotations that these images are portraying. First one, we have mastery, tradition, and pride. And the next one, we have design, modern, and whimsy. Now I want to move on to how do we make things do what we want it to do? Because as you know, food doesn't move. We need to make it move. So let's absorb this image. It might look like an art installation, but it's not. It's actually a practical tool. This tool was used to make bacon fly into air, and we have actually named it the Bacon Playground. And despite that playground look with the aluminium sheets, that is there for a reason. That helps the bacon fly into the air in a random pattern, because what we wanted to express was playfulness. Now, have a look at this one. Here's another machinery that helps us make food and liquids move the way we want it to. You can already, when you look at this, it's almost foreshadowing what happens. You can imagine the liquid falling down the slope and causing a great wave. So hence the name, the wave maker. And what does that look like when we used it with beer? There we go. Isn't that epic? It positions the beer as a force of nature. There's no stopping it. And it's wonderfully invigorating and refreshing. Now, there's one other thing that I want to say that we use to make food look delicious, and that is the use of slow motion. Now, slow motion is obviously an attractive and practical tool to make food look, or to actually shoot food, but it allows us to exploit the movements so we can actually see what's happening. In this image, we have a mango spinning around, so we can't actually see what's happening. It's too fast for the natural eye. So what does it look like shot at 1,000 frames or in slow motion? Wow, look at that. Is that not just magic? The luscious texture is really coming through, and the movement is suddenly dynamic and exhilarating. Now, to end off my section, I want to just show you a few random fun stuff. So if your brand is brave enough to portray food without using food, why don't you go Lego? Or you can always use food as an accessory and go fashion. And then there's synchronization. That adds a lovely, hypnotizing movement to loopable videos. And then what is food if you don't go sexy. And that's all for me, folks, and over to Olaf.
Yeah, so I'm going to finish off with two practical case studies of culinary identities that we've made for actual brands that live in the real world. We're translating brand values into food depiction. First example I want to share with you is the most challenging category of food items, margarine. Margarine is actually really, really boring. In terms of functionality, it is glue for toppings. It's not much more. Blue Band, however, contains essential nutrients for the growth and development of kids. And we took that and created the culinary foundation called Practice is Perfect. Based on research, we learned that if a kid's actively engaged in the making of food, it's more likely to develop more healthy eating habits when it grows up. So practicing is the moment that we show. A kid has done the food styling. You can see that the butter is, the margarine I should say, is spread a bit unevenly. It's a bit clumsy, a bit like a kid would do. The playfulness of the child is definitely there. We codified the angle, always this top-down view for geometrical shapes. And we've codified the colors and the lighting. And we always show a kid's hand. And then, there you have it. There's a distinct, recognizable visual language that covers all the product groups like spreading, cooking, baking, and creams. We did a shoot based on this culinary identity for recipe photos and recipe videos, and there you go. There's a nice consistent look, and over time, even if you leave the product out, it's gonna be a Blue Band image. Actually, when we were shooting this, we were surprised at how quick the process went, because everyone involved knew exactly where to go and what to do. The colors were codified, the props were codified, so everyone, it speaks back. And if you know what you're going to do, what then are you going to do, you know, for Valentine's Day or for Halloween? It immediately comes to mind. The evolution of Blue Band as a brand is clearly visible on their Instagram feed. You see, a while ago, the style was all over the place, different angles, different styles, all sorts of colors, and this is about where our culinary identities start to kick in. So the colors start to behave similarly, images start to, you know, really be grouped together, and the styles were not mixed anymore. You know, the transformation takes place, and it becomes more consistent. The color coding starts to work. On their website, you see the same. There's tons of recipe photos and recipe videos, and there you have it. This is a culinary identity in its natural habitat. And remember, we're talking margarine here, so there's quite a challenge to make that look specific and pretty. On to the second case I want to share with you. A beer brand out of Holland is called Bavaria. And Bavaria is a beer brand from the southern region of the Netherlands called Brabant. In that region, people tend to live the good life and enjoy good food. And Bavaria's brand book says their archetypes are the entertainer and the rebel, who pursue freedom and are extroverts. Right? That's the kind of world they live in. And the values, or the positioning and the values. Positioning says Bavaria helps you make the important unimportant and vice versa. I like that. And then the values are enjoyment, not taking life too seriously, and they always want to be surprising. Now, before we were on board, their product images looked like this. Now, there is not so much fun and surprise about this. You know, I'm like, nothing expresses surprise and fun more than an army parade of beer bottles in a straight line. Does it? And seriously, it was a bit like, it feels like it's shot in a lab. You can feel the photography studio around it, and it's all picture perfect, and it's all straight and kind of symmetrical, but there is no soul, there's no humanity in it. And that's what the brand is all about. It's about fun and not taking life too seriously. But the images look suspiciously serious, I feel. So for Bavaria, we started strategizing, and our train of thought was that what is inside the bubbles of the beer? What's in the bubbles? What is it filled with? They're extroverts, so surely the bubbles are filled with the joie de vivre and with the urge to go out and enjoy life, right? And if there's enough bubbles filled with like lust for life, there always will be a big, healthy, fresh layer of foam on top of the beer. And enter the schuimkuif. The what? Yeah, it's a Dutch term that is virtually untranslatable, but schuim means foam. That's clear. And kuif is a quiff, you know, an upward styled fringe, if you will, a bit like this. You know, the quiff had its time in popular culture. So the schuimkuif as a distinctive brand asset, there you have it. There's always this wave on top of the glass. And what does the schuimkuif, once it's there, what does it tell us? If it's there, what can we conclude from that? If the schuimkuif is there, the beer will be in motion. It will not be static. It will be in a hand or just placed on a table. It's ready to be consumed. It's got a happy, wavy, celebratory kind of connotation to it. And it also informs us as makers on many other choices. What is the foam made of? It's not too thick, it's not too thin, it's nice and liquid. The division line between beer and foam is not straight. It's always a bit wavy. There's a bit of a gradient in there. The gradient in the yellow is not symmetrical because it is in a real place, in the hand of a real human being. There's always bubbles in the beer. We see a lot of images without the bubbles in the beer, but Bavaria has to have the bubbles, otherwise the schuimkuif couldn't be there. So it starts speaking back to us, because you can call this a brand device, but it stretches into an identity, because it simply starts talking back to us. And then we make slides like this. There's how far can we go with the kuif? On the left there's a tiny bit of a kuif, and on the right it's a way too far. And we indicate what is the soft spot or the hot spot. And there you have it, a campaign launching their new 0.0 proposition in the Netherlands, all over the country. And there's a ton of other assets, out of home, TVCs, etc., social media, etc., etc. And in each and every one, the schuimkuif is there, and it tells us as makers where to go. So again, that's a culinary identity in its natural habitat. Now closing up here, the numbers are red by now, so I'm about to close up. If there's one key takeaway from this presentation, in my opinion, and it doesn't only apply to food, but this is a clear example of it, advertising technology can deliver any message to any demographic at any time on any device with almost military precision. But remember that they have to know it's you, because if they don't know, then it simply didn't happen. And that's why we love distinctive brand assets, and we love making food or drink products into a distinctive brand asset. Thank you very much.